Imagine spending your entire life trusting the people around you, only to have them tear you apart when you least expect it. This is not just a story of betrayal, this is a story about how one act of selfishness shattered everything, and how the taste of revenge can feel like the only thing left to hold on to. I used to think that the world was full of guarantees. Family was one of those guarantees, the one constant you could always count on. I trusted them with everything. My love, my loyalty, my dreams, and above all, my respect. I truly believed that no matter what happened, family would always be there. But the truth has a way of breaking you down. The truth comes crashing in when you least expect it, and when it does, it leaves you gasping for air, wondering how it all went wrong. It started with a wedding. My sister, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. The one who always had my parents wrapped around her finger. I was happy for her, of course. Who wouldn't be happy for their sibling? She was getting married to a man she had loved for years. It should have been a joyous occasion. But as the wedding plans unfolded, something strange began to happen. I began to feel like I was being erased. Slowly but surely, I was being cut out of the picture. At first, I told myself it was just my imagination. I told myself I was overreacting, that everything would fall into place eventually. But the silence became louder. When I asked about the wedding, my parents would brush me off with vague comments, telling me they had everything under control. "Don't worry about it," my mother would say. "It's not a big deal." But her words didn't match her actions. I could see it in her eyes, the way she avoided making eye contact, the way she pretended like I wasn't even there. It was as if my presence didn't matter anymore. Then came the invitation, or rather the lack of one. My parents handed them out to everyone, to family, to friends, to distant relatives, but not to me. I stood there watching as they eagerly shared the news, and I felt the sting deep in my chest. It was subtle at first, a cold, creeping feeling that began to take hold of me. But when the wedding day arrived, and I found myself alone in my room, knowing that my own family was celebrating without me, that feeling blossomed into full-blown anger. How could they do this to me? I had always been there for them. I had stood by them through thick and thin, supporting them in every way I could. I had sacrificed so much of my own life, my own happiness, just to make sure that they were okay. Yet here I was, left behind, discarded as though I was nothing more than an afterthought. The anger morphed into disbelief. I couldn't understand why they would treat me this way. Was I not enough? Had I not done enough for them to deserve even the smallest ounce of their attention? What had I done to deserve this? These questions ran on a loop in my mind, over and over again, until they blurred into a haze of confusion and pain. The betrayal wasn't just about the wedding. No, it went deeper than that. It was about all the little things that had led to this moment. It was the way they had always favored my sister, always placed her above me. The way they dismissed my feelings, my thoughts, as though they didn't matter. The way they had never once acknowledged the sacrifices I had made for them, the long hours I had spent working to ensure their comfort, their happiness. And now they were treating me as if I didn't exist. I tried to reach out to my sister, but the message I sent was met with silence. She had always been the one I confided in, the one I thought understood me. But now I was just another person in her life who was being pushed aside for the sake of her wedding. The hurt from that silence hit harder than anything else. It was like a knife twisted deep into my chest. Days passed, and the silence became unbearable. The wedding came and went, and I found myself spiraling into a place of despair. I didn't want to feel this way. I didn't want to hate my family, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized just how much they had hurt me. How much they had taken from me without a second thought. They had always taken, and I had always given. But now they had taken something that could never be replaced, my trust. It wasn't just the wedding. It was everything. It was the years of pretending to be the perfect child, the perfect sibling. The years of swallowing my feelings, of putting their needs above mine, of walking on eggshells to avoid conflict. And for what? For this. For being thrown away the moment they no longer needed me. I began to feel like a ghost in my own life. Every conversation with them felt hollow, every gesture empty. They didn't see me, they didn't care. They never did. And as that realization settled in, something inside me broke. The rage began to rise, a slow burn that started deep in my gut. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It wasn't just the hurt of being ignored. No, it was something darker. Something far more dangerous. The taste of revenge began to fill my mind. Its bitterness mingling with the anger that I had been suppressing for so long. How could I make them feel the way I felt? How could I make them understand the pain they had caused me? How could I make them regret ever treating me like this? The answers came slowly, almost reluctantly. I had never been the type to seek revenge. I'd always believed in forgiveness, in letting go of the past, but this was different. This was more than just a betrayal. This was a violation of everything I'd ever believed in. And if I didn't do something about it, I feared I would lose myself completely. The plan began to take shape in my mind. It wasn't going to be anything extravagant or obvious. No, it had to be smart. It had to be calculated. And most importantly, it had to be something they would never see coming. The first step was cutting ties, removing myself from the equation. They had always relied on me for everything, for financial support, for guidance, for stability. They had taken that for granted, assuming I would always be there. But what if I wasn't? What if I was gone? Not physically, but in every other sense of the word. I made the first call, the one that would change everything. My heart pounded in my chest as I dialed the number. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if it was the right thing to do, but I knew it was the only thing left. "I'm done," I said to the person on the other end. "Take care of everything. The support ends now." It was a simple statement, but it felt like a thunderclap in my ears. The weight of it hit me all at once, and I realized just how far I had gone, just how deep this wound ran. But there was no turning back now. The silence that followed was deafening. I knew they would be angry. I knew they would be hurt, but it didn't matter. What mattered now was that I had taken control. I had stopped being the victim, stopped being the one who was constantly overlooked and undervalued. For once, I had done something for myself. And in that moment, a small flicker of satisfaction ignited within me. It was just the beginning, but it was enough. The taste of revenge was bitter, but it was the only thing that made sense anymore. At first, the silence was unbearable. My parents called me, but I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to hear their apologies, not yet. I wasn't ready to confront them, to see their faces full of regret and guilt, when all I had ever wanted was for them to see me, for them to understand that I wasn't just an afterthought. I wasn't just a convenient person to call when they needed something. I was their son. And now I was someone they couldn't ignore, someone they couldn't control. I spent those days in a haze, not really living, but existing. The days blurred into one another. I would wake up each morning, sit by the window, and look out into the world as if I was observing it from a distance. Everything felt detached. Like I was watching someone else's life, someone else's pain. But deep down, I knew what I had to do. It wasn't just about cutting them off, about pulling away the financial support. It was about making them feel what I had felt for so long. The isolation, the helplessness, the heartbreak of being pushed aside by the people who should have loved me the most. A time when my parents were everything to me, when I thought we were untouchable, invincible. I could still picture us sitting around the dinner table, laughing about something trivial, my sister teasing me about the way I ate my peas. In those moments, I believed in family. I believed that nothing could come between us. But now it felt like all those memories had been stolen from me. They were no longer real. They were just ghosts of a time that never existed. I thought about how they had always been there for my sister, the golden child, how they had always catered to her every whim, while I was the one who was ignored, the one who was supposed to be content with the scraps they left behind. It wasn't fair. And as the anger slowly began to build again, I realized something even darker. My sister was just as complicit in this betrayal as they were. She had always been the favorite, the one they trusted, the one they put all their hopes and dreams into. I could see now that she had been playing her part, manipulating things behind the scenes, making sure that I remained the outsider, the invisible one in our family. It was subtle at first, But the more I thought about it, the more I saw how she had fed into their favoritism, how she had turned a blind eye to the way I was treated. The realization hit like a ton of bricks. The pain of it was almost suffocating. My own sister, the person I had confided in, the person I had always trusted, had knowingly allowed me to be pushed aside. It was one thing for my parents to treat me like this, but for her to be a part of it, to help them tear me down, that was the final straw. I spent nights replaying every moment of my childhood in my mind, every conversation I had with her, every time she'd smiled at me and pretended to care. The flashes of our past, the laughter we once shared, now felt like a sick joke. I'd been so blind, so naive. The anger inside me grew, becoming more focused, more deliberate. I could feel it burning in my chest, like a fire that was just waiting to erupt. But there was a part of me that hesitated. A small part that still wanted to believe that things could be different, that my family could change, that there was hope for reconciliation. I knew that wasn't realistic, but that part of me was still there, clinging to the possibility of something better. I wrestled with my conscience, the weight of my anger and my desire for revenge pulling me in opposite directions. I was at war with myself, torn between the need to make them feel the same pain they had inflicted on me and the lingering hope that somehow things could be healed. But the longer I waited, the more I realized that healing would never come from them. They had chosen their path, and now I had to choose mine. The choice wasn't easy, and I knew the consequences would be far-reaching. But in the end, I had to do what was right for me. I had to take back the control they had stolen from me. And so the plan began to take shape. It wasn't going to be quick. It wasn't going to be flashy. It would be quiet, methodical, and most importantly, it would hurt them where it mattered most. Their pride, their sense of superiority, their need to control everything. I had been the one they turned to for everything, the one who helped with finances, the one who kept things together when everything else fell apart. They never appreciated it. They never acknowledged it. But now I would take it all away. I would show them what it was like to live without the safety net they had always taken for granted. The first step was simple. I stopped answering their calls. I stopped pretending that everything was fine. The second step was harder. I began to unravel the financial ties that had bound us. I moved my investments, took control of assets that were once shared. It was a slow, deliberate process, but each step felt like a victory. As I moved forward with the plan, I couldn't help but feel a sense of numbness. The satisfaction wasn't as fulfilling as I had imagined. Instead of feeling triumphant, I felt empty. The revenge was not the cure I thought it would be. It didn't make the pain go away. It didn't heal the wound in my chest. But it was something. It was a step toward reclaiming my life, toward taking control of my own future. And that was something I hadn't felt in a long time. As the days passed, the reality of what I had done began to sink in. I knew the consequences would come. I knew my family would fight back, that they would try to make me feel guilty for what I was doing. But I had no illusions anymore. I had nothing left to lose. I had been betrayed by the very people I had trusted the most, and now I would make them pay. The phone call finally came. It was from my mother. Her voice trembled, full of desperation. "Please," she said. "We're sorry. We didn't know what we were doing. Please come back." For a moment, I thought about it. I thought about how easy it would be to give in, to go back to the way things were before. But then I remembered everything. The years of silence, the hurt, the betrayal. I took a deep breath and said the words that would change everything. "It's too late." And as I hung up the phone, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't just about making them feel the same pain they had inflicted on me. It was about finally freeing myself from their control. It was about reclaiming my life, my power, and my dignity. But even as I closed the door on them, I carried the weight of it all with me. The emptiness was still there. The anger, the hurt, the loss, but it was a loss I had to endure. It was the price I had to pay for my freedom, and now I was free. Free to move forward, to rebuild, to become someone they could never control again. But the question still lingered in the back of my mind. Was it worth it? Would revenge ever truly satisfy the emptiness I felt inside? I didn't have the answer, but I was done asking questions. It was time to take control of my future, no matter what it cost.